Caroline Kennedy has touched down in Australia, giving her first press conference as US ambassador. JFK's daughter says she's keen to focus on regional security in the Pacific and uphold her family name. And the new ambassador took on local journos right off the bat, casually shutting down one male reporter, she said, for talking out of turn.
And it's been 549 days.
Did you just talk over the woman?
I did.
Okay, well, she started.
Well, turns out the voice of that reporter was our very own Hugh Riminton. Hugh, good to see you. Off the bat, I think it's worth saying you're one of the more gentlemanly folks I've worked with. But what happened? Did you actually interrupt?
It's very kind of you, Hamish. It's a very regrettable incident, if only because actually her arrival here matters a bit. And if you look in the papers and on social media, her shutting down the reporter who spoke over the other reporter seems to be the most important thing about the day. But yeah, it was a news conference. We were told there were going to be 2 questions only. She'd say an opening statement and then 2 questions. And so obviously I was there in the front row early to ask my question. The first question came and went. Someone spoke over me. And then the second question came up and I started talking. I actually didn't hear the other reporter. And so I was a bit perplexed when she said you spoke over the woman because... And I went back to the tape. In fact, I had started speaking before the other reporter, and then she came in, which is entirely within the rules of the game of a news conference. You've got limited opportunities and you compete for the chance to put your questions. It's entirely in the power of the person behind the microphones, the person holding the press conference, to decide who they're going to take a question from. And so I hesitated. I heard another voice, and then that happened. But that's the game, right? So
without sparking an international diplomatic incident here,
yeah,
are we saying?
I think we've done it.
Are you saying that the US ambassador got it wrong?
Not at all. Not at all. No. She's perfectly entitled to conduct a news conference as she wants to, and she can take the questions from whomever she pleases. And the reporter's job is to try and compete to get your question out there. And bear in mind, no one talked over the ambassador. It was very polite. Event, I suppose. No one spoke over her. It was respectful and polite. And whenever you have a situation where you're listening to the person finish their answer and then reporters in the room are going to try and ask their questions, it is inevitable, I would almost guarantee, at every press conference that reporters are going to talk over each other because that's the very nature of the gap when you're allowed to talk. And we don't take turns or pieces of paper or numbers, etc., to do it, as they do in some American sort of presidential-style press conferences. So you just try and get your question out. So it was fairly collegiate, but to my dismay, distracting from the real thing, which is the arrival for the first time in 18 months, 549 days, we have not had a US ambassador in Australia. That's on Biden's watch, while all kinds of things have been happening in our region. So the arrival of a diplomatic star like Caroline Kennedy, the former US ambassador to Japan, someone who knows this region so well, someone with the most famous surname in many ways in American politics, is here working, closely identified with Australian interests, is a really big deal.
Certainly is. Hugh, thank you very much for coming on to clarify. Good to see you.